and I am a research study assistant here at the University of Washington. And I've been working with there on these types of wraparound related projects, WrapTrack release being one of them, and we've been doing that for a couple months now, trying to get this going. So we're excited to be training. This is the end of our second week, and we've gotten probably about 20 organizations trained up now by the end of today. So that's all very exciting, and and it's helping us get more and more familiar with the system every day as well. So it's all a benefit. And yeah, so if you guys have questions as we are going through, please let us know. If you see anything that looks weird, don't please make sure to indicate that, because as I said, we are still kind of learning some things in the system as well, and so any feedback that you have would be very helpful. All right, so let's go ahead and just do introductions on the line, and like I said, let's start with Cheryl on the GoToMeeting list there, and then go through to the end.
Okay, my name is Cheryl Dietrich, and I work for Families Inspiring Families in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And do you want to talk a little bit about your role in your organization and sort of how you're going to be using WrapTrack?
Okay, sure. We do evaluations and collect the wraparound data for a couple of different agencies in Nebraska, and then we input that data into the WrapTrack database to then prepare reports for those agencies.
Great. And Cheryl, do you actually do any of the reporting yourself, or do you do the data entry piece? I'm sorry, I didn't prepare some of my notes that I should have this morning, and I'm trying to get my head wrapped around what everybody's going to be actually doing.
That's okay. I do all of it, actually. I do the evaluations with the consumers. I do the data entry, and then I also extract the data for a report at the end of the 6 months.
Wow, okay, you're really wearing all hats. Okay, good to know. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
On my list, at least, I'm next. I'm David Bolt. I'm from the Georgia Health Policy Center, Center of Excellence. I work in a lot of different program areas, the WIFI being one of them. And I don't actually do the data entry, but we have students to do that. We train the students after watching the after going through the training with work. So that's how we use it.
Okay.
And this is Libby Koss, also with the Center of Excellence with David. He pretty much summed up what our role is here today. And we do have one of our students on the line, Sonia Charday, who does a lot of the data entry, as well as conducts some of the WIFI interviews.
Great. Well, welcome everybody then. That's wonderful. Okay, so as you might have heard while people were kind of joining this morning, there's a possibility that some more folks might be hopping on as we're going through this. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. And if they do join, we'll take a minute to kind of let them introduce themselves and kind of get them caught up as to where we are in the process. I know that we're supposed to have one other organization actually from Nebraska as well. So we'll see if they hop on. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go through a PowerPoint today. And I apologize, I'm sort of getting over a cold still, so I may be a little scratchy and coughy. But at any rate, we're going to do an introduction to the system, obviously. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the unique things specific to WrapTrack that we didn't experience in Wonders. And passwords and updates around that is certainly one of those things. We're also going to go over a possible quote-unquote testing process that we'd like you all to do just really quickly in terms of the data that was mapped over from Wonders to WrapTrack, as well as looking at some screenshots of what WrapTrack looks like. That's a mouthful at times. And then we'll actually get into the real demo. So, okay. Let's talk a little bit about what's going to be the most helpful for you guys to successfully use WrapTrack on your computers. So you can see up here, in the system requirements, there's the operating system, and really the most up-to-date up-to-date one that would be helpful would be Windows 7 for you guys. Now, if you don't have this particular operating system, I wouldn't fret too much, but you certainly don't want to be using a computer, that's 10 years old or anything, obviously. Really, more importantly even than the operating system is the most up-to-date internet browser of any of these options. However, you can see at the bottom here, we would really recommend that you use Google Chrome. There's something about the way that the system interacts with Google Chrome, and it really functions in the way that the programmers had intended it to. So things just visually are more appealing, etc. So that's definitely something that you might want to download. If you don't already have it, here's a link at the bottom to do that. So one other point that we want to make about, when you're getting on here and starting to use WrapTrack for the first time, you want to make sure that whatever internet browser you're using, you have the pop-up blocker disabled, because there are a lot of, as we go into the demo, you'll see a lot of windows that actually have to pop up for reports for data entry, and they pop up into a separate window. So you just want to make sure that that's not blocking you from seeing what the system is wanting you to see. And then finally on this slide, you can see that there are a couple of email addresses that we recommend you adding to your safe sender list. Obviously, WrapEval is at the top. That's us, and hopefully you would have already had that added to your safe sender list. But the bottom two are connected to WrapTrack. And really, the middle one, second one here, is probably the one that you'll get emails from. But the reason it's important is because if you forget your password, for example, there's a little forgot password link when you log into the site, and you can click on that. It'll send you an email with your password, and it will come from that no reply address. So that's why that's important to make sure that you can accept emails from that address. Okay, fancy slide. All right. Moving on. So, as you guys probably know, in the Wonders we had all this information with Wi-Fi 4 and Tom, and now we have that same information in WrapTrack, but we also have the Wi-Fi EZ, which is a new shortened version of the Wi-Fi 4. It's also self-report. And I know that you guys, I think on the phone, are just both using the Wi-Fi 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's what we use here in Nebraska.
Okay. So for both of you guys, sorry? Oh, I thought someone had a question. For both of you guys, we'll mostly be looking at the Wi-Fi 4, but if you have any questions about the Wi-Fi EZ as we go through the process, feel free to jump in. I will say that we are kind of moments away from really alerting the community to the fact that this is going to be ready to use. Again, we're not quite 100% there. We're trying to get the licensing information up on the website and a couple of other minor details. But it's something that people are very interested in. So if folks have questions, email that email address or contact me or April directly, and that would be fine, and we'll let you know about it. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about is how the WrapTrack is sort of built on this TMS, or Team Monitoring System platform. And the reason why this is important to talk about is because you will see, and you could have probably already noticed from the no reply email address, that it'll say WrapTMS all over the place when you go into WrapTrack. Reason for that is because, again, that WrapTrack system is actually on this platform, which means it shares some commonalities with WrapTMS. Do people know about what WrapTMS is? Okay.
No, this is Cheryl. I have not heard of WrapTMS before.
I haven't either.
This is Lydia. I thought WrapTMS, David, for your information, it's kind of like a database, right? It's sort of like what our synthesis is. I think when I was in Orlando, I heard that, but I could be wrong.
Oh, good. Okay, so you've heard a little bit of this information, Libby. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it is a really more like a management information system database, but instead of doing what WrapTrack does, which is just really collecting and maintaining that fidelity data, WrapTrack is really a comprehensive look at your wraparound teams and the entire process. And so I'll just go down to the next slide. And these are the types of things that you can gather and track in the system. So it really is a larger look at a wraparound team versus just this like one fidelity component. You can see here plans of care here, meeting notes, family history, services and cost information, satisfaction as well as some outcomes. But it's really very comprehensive. And the reason we bring it up is because when folks log in and they see WrapTMS, it sometimes is slightly confusing, or it can be slightly confusing. And so, we want to just make sure that folks know, okay, it's not actually WrapTMS that you're logging into, but it is connected to WrapTMS. So, for example, if a community wanted to purchase, which it is an additional fee, but to purchase WrapTMS to either go hand in hand with your current management information system or to replace your existing management information system, or if you don't have one, to obviously use it in that way. If you were already also using WrapTrack, your use files there would just link over. There are a lot of commonalities between the two, but at the same time, they do different roles, and it's a bit of a different process to get started with them. So I did want to make sure to let you guys know about some of these pieces of information on these slides so that you had that. And there are a few things that I can also share with you if you have further questions sort of beyond today's training about WrapTMS. There's a great webinar that was conducted back in October, actually, with the developers, Eric Bruns and Kelly Hyde, and I can get you a link to that if that would be something you'd like to listen to kind of learn a little bit more, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, because they obviously know the ins and outs of the system. And additionally, I'll move to the next slide. If it does sound like something you'd maybe even just want to learn more about or check out for yourself as a community, you can actually just request a free trial to see if it works for you. And if it doesn't work out, obviously you can just disregard any of that other information, but you can certainly just see if it's something that seems like it would be helpful. So again, Wrap eval is fine, or just directly to me is also all right if you'd want to have any of this additional information about WrapTMS. So, all right, but I'm going to go ahead and continue moving forward so we can focus on WrapTrack today. So I want to bring your attention to the fact that our wrapinfo.org page did change a little. So in our transition from Wonders to WrapTrack, somehow in there, we got our WrapInfo page was lost, and so we're working on getting it back up. This is a temporary placeholder for right now, as you can see. And really, what happens is when you log into the page now, you can actually just click right here, and it takes you to the login page of WrapTrack, which I believe might be the next. Yeah, it is the next slide. Okay, so not to fear, that's sort of what's happening. And if you do, for whatever reason, need to just access the what we are calling the work page that looks like this, I don't know if you can click here and get there. I don't know if April set up a link where that works. But if not, you can just type in this address or copy in this URL down here at the bottom if you need to go to that for whatever reason. Obviously, again, that's where you signed up, for your licensing agreement. That's where all the training materials are. Right here at the bottom. So, but we're working on getting that back and running the way it should be, but it might take a couple more weeks for some reason. So, all right. So, I want to go ahead. And get to actually when you log into the system. But does anybody have any questions sort of up until this point?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and keep moving forward. So this is where you would log in with your username and password. And again, we talked about that forgot password link. So if for whatever reason you're in the system and you don't remember what it is, just click right there and you'll get that email from No Reply. And again, this is why we talk about TMS, because it's sort of throughout the system, as you will notice, as well as the actual URL that you use to log in is wraptms.org. So that's just important to note. And this is slide 10 of the presentation. So when I send this to you guys, if you're looking for the URL or the link to actually get into WrapTrack, and you didn't go to wrapinfo.org, for example, you could just use this URL at the top of slide 10. All right. So let's talk about passwords, because again, this is something that is very different than what we were experiencing in Wonders, and it's because the system is much more secure than I think Wonders was able to be. That was certainly a secure system, but this is HIPAA and FERPA compliant, so we're really feeling pretty great about these new changes, but it does mean a little bit of a difference in the way your passwords will look. So as you can see here, you're going to have passwords from now on, 8 to 16 characters in length. You'll have to have a letter, a number, and a special character. As well as your login or your username must at least be 6 characters. So, if your username was, your initials and a number, that's probably going to be too short, for the username. And one thing that I want to just point out, this is not on the slide, but we've had certain communities experience this in different ways, and we're not really sure exactly why it happens, but it's not really an issue or a problem, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But let's say, David, you might log in if you have a username and password, and you might be completely fine with typing in your old Wonders username and password, and that's what you're going to do. That's what everybody will do the first time they log in. And you might be fine using that password for 60 days. The system may never ask you to update it until 60 days from then. Whereas, Libby might log in and might be prompted right away to change her password, as well as, we've had folks that have logged in, used their old Wonders password, hasn't been a problem, and then 3 days later they get prompted to change it. Again, it's not really an issue. It's really just a matter of when are you going to change it for the first time, because at some point you probably will have to change it. And so if it prompts you to change the password, it's a very simple process. You type in your current Wonders password, then you type in the new password twice that you would like to use. And again, you'll keep in mind some of these system requirements as you're doing that, or it won't allow you to move forward. So other than that, it's going to be important to kind of keep track of your passwords, because you will have to change them every 60 days. So that's another new feature. As well as you cannot reuse at least 10 of your previous passwords. The system will hold that history for at least 10 passwords. So it's going to be important that you remember what you've used as well in the past, or some sort of system to make sure that you know what your password should be. And then additionally, I just want to reiterate, and you might have gathered this from some of the earlier slides, but the system is now going to be generating those passwords for you if you've forgotten them. That's not something that April and I can provide to you any longer, because we actually don't have access to your passwords anymore. So in the past, people would just email eval and say, this is who I am, this is the community I work for, I can't get in, I forgot my password, can you please tell me what it is? Or you might have gone even to your local administrator, your local head of your community, and asked for that information. They will not have that information either. So it's really now up to the individual to maintain their password and to make sure that they're updating it every 60 days, or the system will at least remind you every 60 days, and keeping track of that. Okay, so that's the important things to note. Two other things I want to touch on this screen. If you, for whatever reason, log in invalidly at least 5 attempts in 10 minutes, you will become a quote-unquote disabled user. So you won't be able to get into the system. Your local head of your community won't be able to get you into the system. That's at the point at which you need to contact WRT. So you need to contact April or myself and let us know that you've become disabled, and we will enable you as a user again. And so it's a very, simple process, not a big deal, but just to make a note of that if that happens, you'll have to just contact us here at the University of Washington. All right, and then finally on this slide, I do want to make a note of the log out of a period of inactivity. So for example, you can have this set to whatever makes sense for you, actually. If there are increments between 15 and 60 minutes in the system, and I'll show you how to do this, but you can, like let's say you're in the office and you happen to have your own space and you can close the door and, you need to, walk down to the other, I don't know, to another office for whatever reason. You can certainly leave the system up and running if you'd like, because it won't log you off for 60 minutes. But let's say you're at home and you've got kids, and you may want to make that period more like 15 minutes because of the possibilities of what could happen at home. So it's just whatever is up to you. You can be flexible with this, change it every day if you'd like, or just consistently leave it at 60 minutes. That's entirely up to you. Okay, any questions about passwords or usernames or any of this sort of more secure logins, because it is a little bit different?
No.
No, I don't have any.
Great, okay. So let's talk about permissions that look a little bit different than they used to in Wonders. So in Wonders, you guys might remember this, and we were talking a little bit about this with the local head, etc., that there were levels 1 through 5, and a lot of organizations maybe only had levels 1 through 3 or additionally 4, but these were very structured and strict. Like, for example, level 4 could never look at a report only data ever. Like, we couldn't be flexible with that. Those were just sort of the permissions that these levels were given. We couldn't do anything about it. In WrapTrack, however, we are able to be more flexible, and you can customize these different levels to what your group, your local group might need, which is actually just really wonderful. And people have been getting used to this as we've been doing trainings and talking to folks about this. So it is a bit different, but once folks get in there and play around with it, they actually love the ability to make this super customizable. So a couple things to note. For example, WRT at UW is obviously still going to remain at the top, but again, we don't have some of the quote-unquote permissions that we used to have with your passwords, etc. Because of the HIPAA-FERPA compliant nature of this system now, but we can still access quite a bit of information. The next person or step is really going to be, and we should update this slide, but we really want them to be the configuration admin. So that's the local head. You would have been the person that was like in that level 2 spot in Wonders. We want to make sure that you're the configuration admin in WrapTrack. So for those of you on the phone, when you go in, log in with obviously with your Wonders ID. Again, you may need to change it. You may be able to log in right away. But when you get in there, and I'll show you where to find this information, but you're going to want to see what level you've been given. And if it's jurisdictional head and you know that you are the level 2 head in Wonders, we want to make you configuration admin. And the only way to do that is to let me know, and I can change that in the system. But then, you can have, folks that are just doing data entry be your program admin. They can also pull reports if you want. You could actually have this program supervisory admin and team member all have the same permissions if that was something that would be interesting to you to set up that way. Or you could sort of leave it as is. Whatever system you had in Wonders was mapped over that way in WrapTrack, except for this example of the configuration admin. So we would need to update that and change that for you. But other than that, it would be set up exactly as you had it previously, obviously just with different role titles is what we're using them now. So we'll get into the administrative piece of this a little bit later on. But if anybody has any questions, if you don't want to answer or ask them during the training today, always feel free to email me or call me, and we'll get you set up in the right way if there are any concerns about that. Okay, I want to just briefly show you this slide because this is two examples of sort of the different ways that you could set up those permissions if that was something you were interested in doing, for example. Obviously, again, WRT's at the top here in both of the examples. And your configuration admin, or then also your jurisdictional admin, could be someone like the lead evaluator, a statewide administrator, an agency head, but again, you probably have already figured out who that is in your organizations. But again, you can have some of these other folks in those other levels, supervisor, a data entry person, facilitator, so it's really up to you. These are just examples, but you may decide to just leave it sort of as is in the system now. All right, so let's move on to some of the screenshots. All right, this is the home page. So this is what it looks like when you log in for the first time. You'll see that there will be this section for quick links, your youth records, and this box down here, this is my reminders. And actually, this is a box that we would recommend just hitting the little X at the top here. It's not something that you're going to use in WrapTrack. This is a WrapTMS carryover, essentially. So some of the things in this particular version of WrapTrack are kind of relating over to WrapTMS, like I was mentioning earlier. And again, that's because they have that sharing of the platform thing. So some of it you're just going to ignore, and that's when I would just recommend, you can just remove it. And by closing that, it's not a problem. You just get rid of it, and it won't bother you. You can expand all these or minimize them to whatever makes sense, move them around. It's up to you. You can kind of customize this for each user. And this is sort of what we call a dashboard. You can call it whatever, homepage, dashboard, doesn't matter. At the top here, I do want to draw your attention to some of the things, right next to this little person with the tie. I think that's what that's supposed to be. It says, who's logged in and sort of what organization they're connected to. If you want to change your password more frequently than 60 days, you can do so. And then user settings, this is where you're going to change that inactivity, period of inactivity. So you can click on that little link and change that. Or, pardon me, you can also update your email address if there are things like that that you need to change, as well as your security questions. So like when you hit the forgot password link, there's going to be a system that I think something asks you, what's your security question and so forth, and to change that and update that, which I really recommend doing because there's a really temporary placeholder in there right now that the programmers created, and it actually is just like, it doesn't make any sense, so you might want to change that in your user settings as well. Again, I'll show you where to do that. But I do want to draw your attention to this little menu button. Let me hit the next thing. And this is the button that's really going to navigate you through the system. So it's a little bit small to see at times, but it is important to know where it is because when you click on it, this is what drops down. And so you'll see that there's this date and timestamp here at the top, as well as a tab that sort of gets you back to that home page or the dashboard where we just were. A tab for youth enrollment, and this is where you're going to be managing those youth data. So you'll go in and find an existing youth here, or enroll a new youth, or work with multiple youth, what have you. Excuse me, that's on that enrollment tab. And then your WrapTrack tab below that is where that data entry and export of the reports and exporting will be actually. So that's going to be important to note for a lot of folks who are going to be doing that function and feature. The admin tab is really only going to be available to the configuration admins, and I believe also the jurisdictional admins. So that's not going to show up for everyone. So some folks who are just maybe doing data entry would ignore that piece. All right, I'm really going to quickly go through these slides. I don't want to dwell on this because I want to get into the demo. But so this is what you'll see when you log in, and this is like a youth file or a youth record. And I know the type is really small here, so I won't really focus on this a lot. But you can see that at the bottom that this is where an enrollment button is. And one thing to note, when you create a new youth record, so let's say after today you log in, you checked some of the data that was mapped over, it all looks good, and you're ready to start entering some new youth. So you would create a new youth record, And as soon as you did some of that information, you'd enter some basic information that you would have on that youth. Some of that might be from the WIFI demographic information form. So when you enter that information, this file right here on the left-hand side is generated. And then what you need to do is, the next step is click this enrollment button, and this window pops up here. And you can see that down below here, I hope you can see that anyway, that this says pending, and the status above it is enrolled. So every person that you log into the system with the first time, so each new youth record you create will always say pending first. And you actually need to go in with that enrollment button and change them to enrolled. So that's important to note, and again, we'll go into the details of this a little bit. Okay, so data entry looks obviously visually just a little bit different, but is set up exactly the same way. So there are no shockers here. You know, you go through the different tabs at the top. They take you through all of the same questions, set up the exact same way, same responses as the WIFI, you know, that you would normally use. So nothing too scary there. But again, I'll show you how to do all this. WIFI reports set up in the same way. Sort of, we've combined some of the reports together. We've condensed some of them together, like the strengths and areas for improvement, for example, is now in one report. So just be mindful of that, update and change, and really kind of look at the label for what you're actually looking for now. Not a ton of update in terms of the way that the actual reports look. However, the accuracy of the reports is spot on, so that's what we're excited about. Wonders was having obviously a lot of issues at the end of its life, so but we're very happy with these new reports. So let's get the export, and this is again a really small screenshot, so I want to just not dwell on this a lot, but the exports really looks different. And we're going to get into that a little bit when you are filtering for what you're looking for, when you're wanting to say, okay, this is the date range I want, these are the type of youth I'm looking for with this particular type of form. So we'll do an example of this as well, but it does generate into an Excel file down here below that just is much cleaner and less kind of complicated than what we were originally seeing in Wonders. So we're excited about that. All right, so I'm not going to focus on Tom, just because no one really does use Tom here, right? We only use WIFI.
That's correct.
Correct.
Great. All righty, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get our demo up and running here. We move this to the other screen. Okay, so here's obviously your regular login page, and I'm going to log in first with our fake test configuration. Oh, that's weird. I wonder why it didn't save my password this time. Okay, bear with me 1 second. I just have to open my PowerPoint and find that password. Should take that a second. All right. Okay, so you log in, and you can see that for this particular configuration, we've made a lot of changes. We actually got rid of the quick links even because we only wanted to see these youth records. But one thing that you can do, like let's say that I accidentally hit X on this. I'm not going to do it because I just don't want to jinx myself. But if you did, you can hit the, it's actually called Add Items or Hide Items. And let's say I wanted to bring that quick links back up. You can click on it, and it pops right back up with the information that I would need to see. But I'm going to close it. I don't necessarily want it or need it. I really think that the most helpful thing is going to be your youth records, because your quick links are all the same things that are in your menu tab, and you can navigate that way. So wouldn't worry about it too much. But as you can see, it's, you know, obviously, I want that to go away. All of the youth that I have entered as test use are here. And we'll navigate through that. But as well as you can see up at the top, again, this is the person that's logged in, the site that they're logged in as. here's that change password if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and show you those user settings. So if you click on the user settings, it actually allows you to, again, change the email address if you need to, and here's where you're going to update that log out or inactivity time. You actually can just go ahead and select these increments. I'm going to just hit, oops, I meant to hit 60. And then I'd hit save. Yep, I want to save those. And just ask me if I wanted to log back in after I've saved those settings. So I'm also going to click on here because I want to, so I want to show you, if everyone logs in for the very first time and you click on that change security question, this is what you'll see. So it's really kind of weird and it doesn't even really make sense. So you're going to want to make sure that you're putting your password here and that you're putting an appropriate security question and answer that would help you with your obtain access to your password. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's how you would do it. So let's go back to the home page or our dashboard, so to speak. And what I'd like to do is actually walk you guys through the very first thing that you would do once you log in and you're ready to add a new use record through the data entry piece. And then we'll go on to another configuration and actually show you the reports and the exporting feature because they actually have data in that one. It's all de-identified and we can look at that. So that's sort of the setup for this demo. And stop me when you have questions or concerns because I know that there are some folks that will be doing this first piece of it for sure, the data entry piece. So let me know.
Hey, Hattie?
Yeah?
It's Libby. Sorry, I have a quick question. Is there a place on the screen that shows you like where you are with your timeout thing? Like I know you selected 60 minutes. Is there a spot that says like, oh, you know, that counts down that time, or is it just something that we need to keep track of?
Yeah, I don't think that there is because you know if you walk away from your computer and you're inactive, you know just an hour from then if you selected that is when it'll. So it's not while you're using the system. So as you're in the system, to worry about it if you're using it. But if you, definitely,
Okay, thank you.
Sure, but I think it will actually if it's getting close to the time where you might be knocked off. What it'll probably do is a little window will pop up right here because I think I remember seeing this while I was playing around with the system as well, and it popped up saying you will be logged out in 45 seconds, and that's when it started to do the countdown.
Okay, gotcha.
But I had it, you know, sort of aside on my other screen and wasn't doing anything, and then just happened to look up and see that. And I was like, oh, okay, good to know.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so first step, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to click on the menu button, and I'm going to go to enrollment. And you can see that this is, again, where you would add a new youth record, work with an existing youth record, so work with one of these people down here, or you could work with all youth records. So, for example, if you wanted to work with all youth records, you just click on that, and we just show you a list. This is kind of the same list that's on your home screen, but it might be easier to visually sort of see it this way, whatever works for you guys in terms of how you want to do that. But I'll also show you, though, what would happen if you click on work with an existing youth record. So this is kind of a fun feature that we really like because it's a different way to actually look up information about a youth. So for example, there's a community that I know already trained with actually, and this came up and I was really happy that it did because they happen to use the last name and an ID, I think, an actual number for their WRAP ID. And we were trying to search for a kid, and we had forgotten the last name, and we only had the ID at hand. And we typed that in, and we clicked on contains, and then hit search. And we were able to find the youth that way. So that's a nice new thing. Either you can search, it starts with this, or it contains this, because sometimes you may not have all the pieces of the first or last name, or the ID, you know, whatever you guys use. So just a different new way to search, which we really like. Okay, so let's get back to the main thing here. We're going to go ahead and add a new youth record. So this is a youth that's never been in before, and we just selected that. And you can see it pops up with some information like what's the first, last name, gender, race, date of birth, all have these required asterisk fields next to them. And one thing to note is if you guys do not want to include first or last name or even date of birth, there is a workaround for that. So, for example, right down here below, you can see that Wrap ID will be taken as that first and last name if that information isn't provided. So, for example, if you just leave this blank even and you're filling out all this other information, let's just go ahead and do it. And, we're picking and choosing, and let's just say also, you could either go through this calendar system, which is a nice new way to search by year. I can, go that way and just select the month then and pick the date. Or if I don't like that and I don't want to include the date of birth, I can just do that. So it is required to have something in the field. It doesn't mean that it needs to be exactly what the field says it is. So again, you don't need to put first and last name. You can just use an ID. You don't need to actually put the date of birth, but you do need to put all zeros. So it's up to you guys what you need to use for your community. You can tell that street name and phone numbers are not required. So by all means, do not feel the need to enter that information if you don't feel comfortable including it. Last thing I want to show you are the case numbers and Medicaid numbers before we focus on Wrap ID for a second. So this information is, again, entirely up to you if you want to actually enter it into this WrapTrack system. You might have already noticed that for WrapTrack, we have eliminated all of the hundreds of IDs that used to exist in Wonders, and additionally, you have to enter them again and again and again, depending on what type of form you're entering and how many for each use, etc. So we've really eliminated the need for all of that, and now that ID follows a youth record throughout the system, which is great. So it auto-populates in other forms. As well as other pieces of information also. But one thing I want to point out here is that, again, these are not required, so you don't have to enter the case number, Medicaid number, or anything in there at all. Wrap ID, though, is a field that you'll want to enter. And I'm just curious. I just want to test this because I haven't actually done it, but I want to test what happens when I hit save here. So let's see. Okay, so that's your reminder at least. Okay, so it will tell you, since I didn't enter first and last name, it will give me a reminder at the top there. And again, that's because I'm in Google Chrome. Internet Explorer, you won't see that little message at the top. So that's, again, just a little shout out for Google Chrome because it does help quite a bit. So it will alert you to the fact that you didn't enter anything, and hopefully that will remind you that, okay, if you're not entering the actual first and last name, that you're adding the Wrap ID, excuse me. And really, Wrap ID is now equivalent to youth, youth and family ID in Wonders. So that youth and family ID that you used to enter is this Wrap ID. So I just want to make sure folks are aware of that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and randomly put a number there. And you'll see I'm just going to click away from this field that's highlighted, and it'll automatically populate it here. So that's what happens if you don't want to include names. And just hit save. So this is the pop-up box, or one of the pop-up boxes that come up, and it says this youth record was added successfully. Great. Do you want to continue to enter more details for this particular youth, or would you like to add a new youth record? And let's, you may have 5 youth that you want to enter into the system at one time, and you may click no because you want to just continue to enter this information that we just did for all those 5 youth. Or you may choose to do this one at a time, and you'll hit yes. So you'll continue on to that youth file, and this is what is created now for the youth that we were just working with. So you can see here, obviously, those IDs transferred into the first and last name, all of this information transferred over. And now this is the ID, the name, that type of thing that will follow this use throughout the system regardless of what other tabs we click on, which is really nice and helpful. A couple other things to draw your attention to on this screen. I want to bring your attention to this gray box. This is really where that date timestamp sort of thing comes into play really nicely because it actually tracks, what day was this entered on, and then additionally, was it edited, and if so, what date? Also, who's the person that logged in and entered this? So, it's just nice to kind of keep track of some of this information, helpful to see it. Obviously, if you're a supervisor sort of looking in on somebody that's been doing data entry and you have those administrative privileges, you will be able to look at every single use that you want to see, and you'll see that, okay, well, this was entered by, somebody here, and it was on this date, and you may have 5 people that you're managing in that way. So that's just a nice way to be able to see, okay, well, who entered this use information. So, and finally, before we go on to enrollment, I want to make a note of the primary caregiver, obviously the enrollment status, and the facilitator. So this, again, you can see is not a field that you can enter into. It's generated from somewhere else, similar to this information. Primary caregiver is actually going to be added if you complete a WIFI caregiver and include the caregiver name. So that's when you'll see the name populate here. Same with the facilitator. Facilitator name is only populated if you complete a facilitator form and include that information. So we'll do a couple of examples in a minute here, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. All right, so we've really completed step 1, which was get that new youth record in, and you can see that we've generated the file there, and we're ready to move on. Step 2 is going to be enrollment, this enrollment box down here, because we can see that this use is listed as pending, and we need to make sure that we change that from pending to enrolled. Just one of those things about this particular system that you have to remember to make sure to do that. So you click on the enrollment button, and this is, again, another pop-up box that shows up. And you can see that, this is the information that we've gathered about how long this use is pending. And for different communities, you may end up doing this differently. You may have a use pending for a couple days because you're not ready to enter their data or haven't collected their data yet. That's completely fine. It doesn't really matter, for our purposes at WRT, what date you use when you make them pending to enrolled, any of that. Obviously, if you do keep track of the actual enrollment date into services, that's the date that you're going to use in this next step. So you click on Add Enrollment Status, and then, again, if you actually kept track of that and you used to do that in Wonders, that would be the date you would use here. For this example, I'm just going to click on Today because we just started them today. So I'm going to do a drop-down, and I'm going to hit Enrolled. One thing, though, while we're here that I want to show you is, let's say obviously you've worked with all your youth, and again, I want to reiterate that all your youth from Wonders into WrapTrack now will all be enrolled. So just to note that you won't have to switch anybody from pending to enrolled. They're already all listed as enrolled. But if, for example, let's say you actually wanted to start tracking discharge information in the system. If that was something that was interesting to you to do here, you could click on discharge, and then you could actually select a reason as to why the youth was discharged, and you can connect a date with that and keep track of it that way. That won't impact the reporting in any way, so if you discharge a youth, they'll still show up in the reports. Just want to make sure folks are aware of that. But what I'm going to do is just continue moving forward with enrolled. So I've got my date in there, changed to enrolled, and then I'm actually going to be able to choose my my organization. So I'm going to choose this one at the bottom and hit Save. But this is for those groups that maybe have multiple subsites. Your subsites will be listed here as well, and you'll be able to actually select the correct site for the correct use. So just going to hit Save. It tells me at the top here all that was done successfully. I can see that they're enrolled. This is the date. This is the organization that use is connected to. And again, for those administrators, you have the privileges to be able to edit and delete this if you felt like that was necessary. All right, so I just completed step 2. Now I'm on to step 3. So I want to go ahead and click on this WrapTrack tab right next to the demographic tab. And you might notice that these questions are actually from the WIFI demographic form. And let me just do another quick poll here. So Cheryl and David, you guys both do the WIFI demo form, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Perfect. So all of this should look familiar. This is obviously the school part on the back of the WIFI demo form that you'll see, and it just happens to go on a separate tab. So this is, if you want to think about it almost, this is like the front page of the demographic form. This is like the back page of the demographic form. But at any rate, here's where we're going to put that information. And if I were to click yes, I would then just go on to the question about what grade is it using now or will be in, and I could select that. And that's very similar to the form. The thing I want to note is if I select no, for example, you'll note that this next section pops up with the other information that I would need to add. And obviously that mimics the way the form flows as well. So these things will not be visible unless that selection has been made. And that's kind of throughout the system. You'll notice that in the caregiver form, the facilitated form, all of the forms as well. So the system does that automatically, which we think is nice. It reduces the amount of information on the page and the clutter. So I'm just going to, for example, for the purposes of this, just say, okay, other, and I can type in, whatever it is. And that's it. So I'm just going to hit save. All saved successfully. Great. And I'll just go back and I'll look at my page. And so now I've done mostly everything I need to do prior to entering the actual WIFI data. So I've got my demographics form in, my enrollment has been changed and updated, and I added that school information on the WrapTrack tab. Now I'm ready for step 4, which is data entry. And I'm going to hit assessments. And again, here's the examples that, this information just kind of follows this youth throughout, which is really nice. You can tell that obviously this is a new youth who has no forms, so I'm going to hit add. Now, your options that will be listed, because you guys only use the WIFI, are just going to be these forms here. You won't see Tom, you won't see easy information, you'll just see the WIFI. So I'm just going to do a caregiver form to show you, again, and see how it pops up in another window. To show you an example of how when you enter this caregiver information here, it'll be generated in the sort of youth page that we were just on. So let's just enter some fake data here. Anybody have any questions up until this point?
Not so far.
No, I don't think so.
Great. So here we go. I'm just going to say that this is Robbie, is the caregiver. Facilitator's name is Tim. Now let's say that I collected this interview information on Monday of this week, and I'm just getting to enter it now. I can actually make sure that this date changes to Monday, to the actual date of the interview. One thing I do want to reiterate right now is that interview date equals today's date in Wonders. So the today's date is the same as the interview date. I just think that interview date makes it so much more clear what information you're supposed to put in there. So we actually want to know what date the interview was completed. I'm going to just, again, because we just enrolled this youth, I'm going to do all of this on the same day because I don't want the system to say, wait a minute, you can't interview this youth before they were enrolled. So I'm just going to put it as today. And we'll just select, this information. You can put whatever you guys normally track here. You can use these drop-downs, or you can actually tab through and select, and then the interview name, we'll say, Jane, and you can just continue on, to whatever it is. Just kind of randomly check with the caregiver's relationship. I'll say, if your parents have legal custody, we'll leave that the youth hadn't been in custody, that yes, they're receiving wraparound for 6 months, and that yes, they have a wraparound team. And so you can see as I select some of these things, if I had no here, it would stop. I would not enter that information. But if I hit yes, it opens it up and I have to scroll down to see the next section. So I'm just going to kind of click on these sort of, haphazardly and not really making too much sense about it, but just clicking for the example. And then if I had additional people, then I can enter that information there. Okay, so that's essentially that first page of your caregiver form, which is why we've called it Caregiver Introduction here on the tab. One thing that's different in, maybe a little bit different in the system, and I recommend, maybe not doing this, is don't hit the save until you've gone to the end of the interview. And actually, the system doesn't even like you to be able to do that. I'll show you exactly what happens when you click save. So you'll hit save, and it says the length of the interview is weird, and it should be between this amount of time, and it's simply because we haven't actually completed the end time. So the computer system is confused. It's saying that this is wrong. So it won't actually even let you do it until you get to the end and you complete this information. So, I would just say continue to move forward through here, tab along, and then get to the end and complete. Now, for example, if you know that you're going to need to step away from this halfway through, you may decide that you want to enter that end date a little sooner and then just hit save and go back and edit it later. But you may, decide that, for example, if you're a person that only does data entry, you may not have the ability to do that, because in Wonders it was set up that folks that did data entry only couldn't go back and edit forms, and that, again, would be translated over to WrapTrack. So if that's the case, you guys doing that type of work would need to make sure that you're completing every form every time, saving it at the end, and then moving on to something else if that's what you need to do. All right, but either way, start from the beginning, go through to the end, then hit save. That's going to be the easiest thing. That's my recommendation. Again, this is similar. You can click the drop-down, select what you're trying to choose, or you can hit tab. You can see that that's maybe highlighted. Hopefully you can see it, that box. And I'm just going to tab through, I'm just going to get the mouse out of the way, and select these things. Now, one thing I want to show you, and it is a current error that's in the system that we're working on fixing, and we're hoping it's not going to be a problem for too much longer, but I'm just going to show you an example of what I mean. So for the first question, I'm not going to answer it, and I'll show you what happens. Oops, I said not to answer it. Okay, my brain is a little slow today, apparently. Okay. So I can actually just continue to skip through and answer all the other questions and even go on to the next section. And, that's not the way we intended this to be, because in Wonders it stopped you. You weren't able to actually move forward without answering all the questions. And we must have just, miscommunicated that to our programmers. So they're working on it, but currently, right now, that's just something you're going to need to be a little bit more aware of as you're going through and doing this data entry. So you just want to make sure that this doesn't happen, that you enter every response that you have from the hard copy form onto the electronic. Okay, so we'll just continue to go through here and enter whatever just to get to the end. And I'm just skipping through these because these are just identical again to what's already on the form, so no surprises. Whatever is here, and I'm going to go ahead and say that we did this interview in 20 minutes. And then I'm going to hit save. And then now it says, great, you saved them successfully. It actually has the length of the interview in there now, and I can close this section. And so I'm just going to hit close. And now you can see that the caregiver form pops up right here. And again, for those of you with those admin privileges, you'll have this ability. For folks that might be just doing data entry, you won't necessarily, unless you guys as a community want to change that and possibly give folks the ability to make edits so that they can go back in and click here and say, oh, right, I do think I left this form, I left this one blank and I need to change it to that or whatever it is. So you will have the ability to do that if that's something that you'd want to change. You wouldn't have to necessarily show this delete feature. You could remove that entirely. So that's up to you. We can specify it to what your needs are as a community. Okay. So those are really the 4 steps to getting a use enrolled into, let's go back to the home. So getting a new use record in, enrolling them, adding their school information, and then entering their data. So any questions about that whole process that folks might have?
Nope, I think we're okay.
Excellent. Good, good, good. All right, so I'm going to log out of here to show you guys the reporting. lost all of my regular old logins with this. But at any rate, so this is a community that is an actual community, and we like to use them as an example because it's all de-identified data in here. They only use IDs. They don't even include date of birth, some of that stuff. So when we look at this information, it's completely fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're just going to say, okay, great, we're ready to actually look at some of those reports. So I'll click on Menu, and I'll go to WrapTrack Reports and Data Export. And again, you can see here that these two options show up. Just the WIFI reports, because, for example, for you guys as well, you only use the WIFI, so Tom or WIFI Easy will not show up in this list here. And then the export feature, the data export feature. So let's click on Report. And the one really major difference that you'll note, and we'll talk about that right now, is when you clicked onto the report section in Wonders originally, it would first take you through a process of adding all of your qualifiers into what you wanted the reports to look like. This is different. You actually start with the report that you want to look at first and then add your qualifiers. So for example, let's click on Report 4. Let's say, and I know for example that this site has two subsites, so I want to look at both of those subsites. I'm going to click here, click Continue, and it selected those already, so that's great. I wanted that to happen. Now it pops up with another section saying, okay, do you want to do the date range? I don't want to do that. I'm just going to select all. All this is the same, again, that you should see first, most recent, or mean score. I'm going to do mean. And this is the difference. Keep qualification. So I'm going to check on that box right there, the keep qualification box. And I'm going to do that because this is where you will be able to keep those exact qualifications for all 10 reports if that's what you want to look at. We've set it up this way so that if you just want to look at one report, you can do that. It won't take a million years to generate the reports. You can simply look at one report and move on. But if you want to look at all of the reports and you want to look at them in the same way, you keep that qualification. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then I'll click on another report just to give you an example of what happens when you then move on to the next report. It asks you, oh, did you want to keep those qualifications? And you'll say yes, obviously. I'm just going to load up here for a second. Okay, so here's what we see. And we really recommend when you're looking at the reports and the exports as well, that you actually go ahead and put it into a different format because this screen unfortunately doesn't open up any larger. It can be hard to kind of see or navigate through. So that's something to think about. Also, be mindful of the fact that up here, this toolbar, which looks a little bit different than it used to, you can navigate if there are multiple pages to the other pages. So just keep that in mind. That it's not just necessarily scrolling down. You may have a couple of pages to look through, so you may want to go ahead and export that. I'll tell you about that in a second. But before we get there, I do want to show you just how this looks. Obviously, it tells you we're WrapTrack. This is the community that I'm in. This is the report that I'm in. I said I want to look at all of the organizations by the mean value, no date ranges, and print it on this date. Let's say that someone is in the system and doing data entry, and you know that that's happening, and you're ready to generate a report. And you're saying, okay, well, I really want to wait and get all of the most up-to-date information. You can still be logged in, and when you're ready, just hit refresh, and it'll generate the most up-to-date data in the report based on what's been entered. And it's taking a minute for that to load up. Hang on one second. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and show you that export. So, for folks that maybe use these, and obviously I chose a report here that doesn't have a graph or figure, but if you're interested in using the graphs and figures that are generated from these reports, you may want to push this into Excel or into Word so that you can actually copy and paste those graphs and put them into another report that you guys need to create. For example, if that's something that you need to do, that would be extremely helpful. But I'm going to push it into PDF. I just want to show you what that looks like and how clean and nice it is. wait till the internet is slow. Well, that's weird. That's not actually happened before, but I'm going to go ahead and just say, yeah, I think it's okay, because I've done this before and it doesn't do any harm to my computer. And here it is. So I pulled this information up into a PDF for me, and it showed me again, yep, here's that information. And when it pushed it into PDF, it actually had to put it onto 2 pages because of the length of the information. But there it is. So we like that, you can push it into PDF if you want to print it out and bring it to a meeting, for example, or you can manipulate the data and push it into Excel and Word and be able to do that. So that's that. I just want to go ahead and finally show you when you click on this. Here we go. So let's say I wanted to look now at all of those reports, not just the one I was selecting. This is what pops up. You want your existing selections. And I'm just going to hit yeah. So that's what will happen when you hit that keep qualification checkbox as a reminder. And I've chosen this report because of the different features that I want to highlight. Sometimes this is easy to miss. It was easy to miss in Wonders as well, so I just want to draw your attention to it. At the very top of the toolbar, you also have this other feature. So some of these reports where there are multiple pieces to them, where they've been combined, please note that this is going to be at the top. So for example, this is the overall fidelity one. So let's say I want to look at principal and respondent scores. So I'm going to select that, and then an additional line even shows up saying, okay, well, you want to look at these. What respondents then do you want to look at? And I'm going to unselect youth and team member because this configuration doesn't even interview youth and team members. So I've done all that. I said, okay, that's great, looks good, hit show, and it generates that report for me. And there it is. And obviously it has the national means in there, which have been updated to be accurate. So that's just as easy as it is. So questions about reports. It's fairly straightforward, but all right, let's move on. Quickly to export. Okay. So we'll let you know that through this testing, which is one of the reasons why we want folks to kind of go into the system, look around, and kind of get familiar with it, see if any of your data mapped over oddly, or just anything that looks different in the system that seems to be an error. We're asking folks to do that because sometimes April and I have lived in it for so long, but even still we might miss something, and here's something that we did miss. So when you're in the export feature, you're actually we want to be able to select the youth and see sort of what organization they're connected to, because we also want to be able to generate reports via organization. Currently, in this right now, that's not possible. So I want to just point that out. We are aware of it, and that is an error that we've shared with our programmers, and it will be fixed. But currently, let's just look at what sort of the features are right now. You can pull by use, and you can do a single use and search for that person, or you can do multiple use. I'm going to go ahead and do multiple. Oh, and you know what? We might actually be still having a problem. It was weird. Yesterday morning, this feature completely worked fine. And then yesterday afternoon when we were demoing it, we weren't able to generate any exports. So that might actually happen, but let's see. Oh, okay, good. We are able to do it today. Yay. So there's quite a bit of data here, as you can see. Now, you can go over here and just select all or none or what have you. I'm going to select all, and I know that I have some test views in here, which you can remove. And obviously, for this configuration or organization, at some point we will go ahead and remove these test views, but we're just keeping them in there for the purposes of our training. You can go ahead and do that. Then you would say, okay, great, got these I want to look at. Go down to Filter Data and look at Content. Now you can, if you're exporting this into Excel, probably you're doing it because you actually want to do some additional data analyses, and you may only want to look at those numeric values. But you can also just choose text if you want, and I'm going to do numeric and text to show you just what it looks like. You can do comma separated or a spreadsheet. We'll just do a spreadsheet. And scope is nice because you can select all of the data. You can do it by this year, the month, specific dates, whatever you're looking for, really, that makes sense for you guys. I think most people will probably choose specific dates, and that's what I'm going to do here. And then you can see that those grayed out boxes actually come up when you selected specific dates. So then I'm going to say I want to look at this data from, let's just pick August to, and then this little thing just says, as a reminder, make sure it's not, the to date isn't before the from date. So we'll just choose December. Let's say December 1st. Weird date range, but let's just say that. And now, for example, also, if you wanted to, share this export with folks, or again, bring it to a meeting or something like that, and you didn't want that identifying information there, just check that box and it won't show up. This group, obviously, again, doesn't have it, so we're just going to go ahead and preview the output. Now, you get a couple of options, and again, here's one of those examples where you really don't want to look at the data this way. This doesn't really help. It's not a lot of, there's not a lot of ease in looking at it this way, so we really recommend that you're actually putting it into Excel. This is like the intermediary step, because we've added a new feature where not only can you then push this into Excel, but you can also email it. And I want to just select that to show you how that works. So obviously you just put to subject, here's the actual attachment of the file, type in whatever it is, and then hit send. I'm not going to do that, but you can. I'm just going to go back to the preview output. And now I'm actually just going to save it. And this little pop-up window over here shows up. And here's what it is. So here's all, here's all that data that I had asked it to generate. And you can see it just visually is a little bit cleaner. The use and name and ID, positive, negative feedback, start and end time. A couple things I want to draw your attention to, and that would be the way visually this value labels have been done. And we're going to include a user manual, which will have a data dictionary, but we're still working on some of those pieces. So for right now, if you have questions, I'd encourage folks to reference back to this recording. But when we get that ready, we'll make sure to send that out to folks so that you have it. And the reason why is mostly because, again, these value labels have been changed a little bit, but they're pretty easy to navigate through. E is engagement, and obviously this is engagement question 2, and this is the numeric version of it. This is the text version of it, and obviously that translates to question 1.2 on the WIFI. You can see, obviously, when you get into the section that has the letter P, it's planning, the planning phase. So planning question 1, numeric, and text. Obviously, that's question 2.1 on the actual form. So, easy enough to figure out, but it just looks a little bit different visually. So that's that, and really, that's our whole system, that we wanted to share with you guys for getting a youth entered, getting their data in, running reports, exporting, that type of thing. So does anybody have any questions about the system? Wow, you guys are fantastic. Obviously feel free to step up and email or call if you do have questions when you're actually getting in there for the first time. But it sounds like you guys are pretty solid on it. One final piece that I want to show folks is the administrative piece. And again, this is only really going to be relevant to those folks that were equivalent to a level 2 in Wonders. So you're going to want to make sure that again, you are either listed as the, that you're listed as the configuration admin in here. And the way that you would do that is, for those individuals that were local heads of their organizations, you're going to hit admin, and you'll have this, obviously, at the bottom. You'll hit administrative tool, and then you'll actually be able to go through another section of these admin privileges. So what you're going to do then is you click on Manage Users, and it then lists out who you have with passwords and logins. And it'll tell you their current role now in WrapTrack and other information. And so you would want to check, for example, do they have their email address updated? Some of that. This is a one user configuration, so that's why this is sort of set up a little bit differently. But if I needed to, I could edit this for any reason. I could update the password here. I could update email address and some of these other things. So this is really where you're going to manage those users and tell what actual title you have or role you have in the system. And again, let me know if it is not configuration admin, because that we will want to change for you. But let's say you needed to add additional users who are going to do data entry, or just folks that are now needing to get in here and pull reports or what have you. We really recommend, and this is a little bit different in the setup for Wonders, but we really do recommend now that folks each have individual logins, because they are connected to because they are connected to email addresses now, and because they're regularly being updated. And it might be a little bit more confusing to have to then share that password around with, however many people, 5 people, every 60 days or something. So we really do recommend just creating new users for folks who would need to get into the system, giving them a certain role and assigning those privileges. And here's how you do that. So you click on Add New User, you put their information in, assign them a username and a password. Obviously, because you're able to do this as a configuration admin, you want to make sure that you write all of it down and share it with the individual that you're creating the username for. Put in their correct email address, and here's where you select certain things. So here's where you select what role are they going to be. And they can only be those roles in the steps below the configuration admin, so keep that in mind. And it's really up to you, and again, it's entirely what makes sense for your organization. You may choose that you're going to have team members be listed as those people that only do the data entry piece. You could call program admins the folks that only look at reporting, for example. It's entirely up to you. So you would just select it. So let's pretend that for the purposes of our demonstration, let's pretend I selected program admin, and I'll show you what you would do after that. So we'll just say I've selected that. You're going to want to make sure that you actually also, if you have those subsites, select Add Organization. And then you'd select, okay, let's pretend that this person, again, is connected only to this one subsite, Mason County. And I'd select that checkbox on both of these columns, primary organization. And I'd hit OK. Obviously, I'm not going to save any of this. So you'd want to make sure you get in here, put all their information in, username and password, select their role, and assign them that organization so that they can only see certain data if that's necessary for them. If they can see all of the data, then you'd go in and you'd make sure that their actual primary organization is selected as the main one, which is always here with your asterisk. So that is the main organization. Okay. So let's pretend, again, program admin is the one that we were going to select. So I've got this new user in, and I'm going to go into my permissions. And here's then when you can select, okay, well, supervisory admins can have these permissions, team members can do these, but again, we're going to do program admins, and they can do these permissions. And it's really not too complicated, but it does take a minute to get in there and play around with it. So you really want to go in and then check all of these tabs and see what they do. You're not going to have the Wi-Fi Easy one, you'll just have the Wi-Fi 4, but you'll check in here, you'll go through and see what they can do. Then each tab even sometimes has these additional drop-downs. So really, it's up to you guys what makes sense. But for example, let's click on the Wi-Fi 4 one. And let's say that, for whatever reason, you guys were just doing what this particular configuration is doing, is only collecting Wi-Fi and facilitator and caregiver data. You could even just unselect these so they're not even listed as options when a person who's doing data entry generates for that type of information when they're there. So they could go into that assessments tab and then click Add, and then they won't even see those other options. They would just see the ones that they would be able to do. Then let's say we don't want them to do any exporting, but we're okay with them looking at the reports. And then you could even say, well, honestly, we only want them to look at the first 5 reports. You just unselect all of the others. So it's really as simple as that. It's just a matter of kind of going in, and I'm going to put this information back the way it was. But it's really a matter of going in and just, selecting what makes sense, unchecking those things that you don't want those roles to be able to do. So just get familiar with it. Really kind of go in and play around with it. The tab that I would recommend kind of staying away from is going to be your admin tab. Because, for example, like if you go on to tools, you could click on these. I don't think that it's a good idea to select any of these. You want to make sure that really in the admin section and all of these options, that these are really unchecked, because you don't want anyone to at all add a question to a tool. That is not something that we're going to be comfortable with folks doing. So just make sure that when you go into admin, going through these, that this stuff is really not really checked. And obviously we can see that for this organization we still have to update that for them. But you guys can obviously do this for yourself, and so just make sure of that. But get familiar with it. Really the things that you're going to be playing around in here are going to be permissions and users, and that's really it. Roles, it just is basically a list of the roles that are already there. We don't think that you're going to need to add any roles or manage them, basic roles. You won't even click on this button. So really the roles section you can ignore. If you need to add an additional subsite, however, this is where you would do that, and you could certainly do that. I'm going to click on Manage All and just show you guys, like for example, see this person has their main one, and then we've got the 2 subsites underneath of them. And they could always just go ahead and add an additional organization. But you obviously would want to communicate that with us at the UW Word team, because it will impact your license agreement. So just bear that in mind. But you obviously can manage that. But really, roles, use records, and I'll select this just so you can sort of see what's here. But it just gives you a list of every use record. You really can't do too much on this page. We're actually trying to get them to be able to add like a print feature here, so that you could just print this page, but that's something down the line. But really you're going to be using the users, adding users, managing users, and giving them permissions. So again, this is for those configuration admins. But does anybody have any questions about that? Fantastic. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do, let's just go back to the PowerPoint, log out of here, close out, and I want to just kind of go down to the next section and really quickly talk about sort of the testing, quote-unquote, that we want you guys to do. I'm just writing myself one note. Okay. So what we would like you to do is, again, real quick spot check. That's really what we're asking. Not going through every single use file and looking at, all of the pieces of information, but really taking a handful of views, a percentage of views that you have that existed in Wonders that got transferred over to WrapTrack, looking at, do their forms match up to the correct use? Does the name, ID, date of birth, those types of things all match up? So check all of that information, because we just are looking for mapping errors, those data mapping errors. I really wouldn't look too much at the reporting and exporting, because you wouldn't want to compare reports and exports from Wonders to now in WrapTrack, because again, we had so many issues with Wonders at the end. But you can look at those sections in terms of, oh, this is really neat, or like the other, one of those other communities I was mentioning said, hey, where's the organizational piece? How can we be able to pull this by organization? So go in there and play around with it, obviously, and let us know if you see anything missing, but I wouldn't look at the numbers necessarily. And please, actually, we should have removed this this bullet here, but ignore this Wonder staging site. We were setting it up for the possibility of helping with this quick testing or data checking of the mapping, but it's actually, because we're having so many issues with the Wrap info page, that site's no longer working either. So we're having a lot of technological website things kind of going on, but it's all right. I think it's all working out fine. WrapTrack works, and that's the most important piece. So, all right, a couple things to remember. Again, if you didn't have every single demographic form added for each youth, some of those youth may not have transferred. Doesn't sound like that's an issue for you guys, so that's wonderful. Again, if you're looking at reports, some of those totals may not match exactly compared to Wonders and WrapTrack because of all the errors. And then finally, if you're going in here, you're missing anything, you can't access something, please let us know. Certainly go to those local heads first if that's your role, but if you're one of the local heads and are having issues with that, again, please contact myself or April at the work team here, and we'll help you out. And then let's talk about the next steps here. So we really want to get any of that feedback that you have from this system, from the data mapping issues that you may or may not find. Hopefully you won't find any because April and I have done some really extensive testing. But if you do find some, please make sure to get that back to us no later than March 10th. And I'm going to show you the file that we would like you to complete in a second. But you may also be able to knock this out in a couple of days, one person setting aside some time for it. It may not take a long time at all. So if you can get back to us sooner, that would be fine. All right, so here's the Excel file. Let's go ahead and get out of here. And basically, you're just looking at these gray columns, and the information that you're going to enter would be, so for example, if you do see an error, where is that error in the system? Are you in the WIFI forms, a specific form, the caregiver form, for example? Were you looking at exports or reports? Were you just entering demo information? Where was it in the system that you were seeing an issue? Then you want to put your name and the organization that you're from so that we know, as well as sharing your login and password. And again, that's because we want to be able to replicate that error that you're seeing, and we need to be able to log in with your information in order to do so, because again, we don't have access to those passwords. So please share that info. And these last few columns, let's talk about that. Sorry. So basically, this little information here is described for the options here that you can list. But for example, you may have a bug in the system, and a bug is really something where it's like, for example, in this line here, you can see when I hit export in TOM export, it gives me an error message. So it's actually preventing you from moving forward in the system. So because of that bug, you can't actually function in the way that you're supposed to. That's what a bug would be defined as. Versus an edit, for example, is an error in the system. You still notice it, but you can continue to move forward without any issues. So, for example, here's a great one. Wraparound was misspelled, and we need to have wraparound spelled correctly. Again, doesn't prohibit you from moving forward in the system, but it is something that we want to change. So that would be an edit. And finally, again, if you're seeing any of those things where, you've got a great idea for something with the system that we hadn't thought of already, please include that. And we're calling those new developments. So any new idea that you have or want to see in the system in the future, feel free to include that on this form and just label it as new development. Finally, you're just going to write, obviously, what that issue is, what the change is that you'd like to see. And then include any screenshots that you can, because that's extremely helpful for the programmers, because then they can just go ahead and, you can minimize them super small, and they can just go in here and blow them up and say, oh, this is exactly where they were. I see now what's happening. So, it's a little bit easier for them to sort of navigate through the system with that. So, so that's that form. That is everything. Do you guys have any questions or concerns as we wrap up today?
No.
Okay, I'm
sorry. My question was, when we, after we do the data checking, when are we able to actually enter the data into the database?
Great question. Yeah, actually. So as soon as you have gone through and checked and you feel either like, okay, I've completed my feedback, I'm going to send it in, there's a few things, but, mostly you can move forward, go ahead and start entering. If you don't feel like you have any errors or feedback to provide, you can go ahead and start right away. So it's really when you feel confident that the data mapped over from Wonders is accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so it sounds like we're all squared away here. What I'm going to do is when I stop recording, I'm going to have to, it takes kind of a little bit of a lengthy amount of time for that process to transfer to certain files and what have you. So it may be a little bit of time, and I do have another training starting up in about 20 minutes. So it might not be, for those of you who are, on the East Coast, you might not get this until later, closer to the end of the day, but you'll have it in your inbox for Monday morning. But just, be aware of the fact that I will be sending the PowerPoint, the recording here, and additionally